this podcast today, we'll be talking about why punishing our kids for their big emotions, uncomfortable feelings, it's not actually helpful, and what we can do instead to help them through that feeling and teach them skills how to respond better in the future. Welcome back, mamas. This is Elizabeth, and this is Emotionally Healthy Legacy. My passion here is to educate moms about emotional wellness and motherhood, how to manage their own big feelings that are uncomfortable, and then how we can help our little ones with their uncomfortable feelings. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that involves our children and when they are feeling uncomfortable and difficult emotions, such as anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, anything that involves uncomfortable feeling and when they behave in a negative way. So anytime us as a parent, as a mom, when you feel overwhelmed, when you're frustrated, when you're stressed, when you feel irritated, whatever the issue may be, you will notice that your behavior is not as positive as it would be if you're feeling good on the inside. Typically, you would react in negative ways, in ways that you know you shouldn't or you don't even want to react, but it just kind of comes out. Same thing with children. So let me give you an example. I have a 3.5-year-old boy, and he really lately gotten into puzzles, but he's still struggling with it and he needs help. So he's building a puzzle and it's not working out for him. He's trying to put a piece and it's in the wrong spot and he's twisting it and turning it and it's not turning out. So he got upset and he just threw the puzzle across the room. Well, what do we normally do? What was done in your family when you were growing up? Typically, we will scold the child for throwing a puzzle, and we would maybe even raise our own voice and say, "Hey, calm down. Stop throwing the puzzles. That's not okay." And that's what I used to do. But seeing now from a different lens, my mindset is different. If my child is behaving in a negative way, there is an internal struggle that's going on. So when I see him being frustrated with a puzzle, now instead I say, "Hey honey, what's going on?" He's like, "It's not working out." My response is, "Okay, do you need some help?" He says yes. And then I walk him through it. I say, "Mom, puzzle is not working out. I need your help." And he repeats after me and he says, "Mom, I need your help with the puzzle." And I say, "I'd love to help you, Philip. I'd love to help you with that puzzle." So now seeing that he's overwhelmed and he's frustrated and it's coming out in his behavior because he's overwhelmed by that feeling and he did not know how to handle it, or not just necessarily how. I have taught him the skill how, because kids are very impulsive. Many of us adults have impulses that are not helpful, but then we expect our little ones to just respond in a mature way. We expect a 3-year-old to handle his frustration and overwhelm in a mature way and be coming up to you and say, "Hey mom, I'm feeling really frustrated. Please help me out." Many times we don't do that with our spouses or others around us, but yet we expect a 3-year-old who is immature, whose brain is not developed fully until his mid-20s to respond in a mature, healthy way. Of course he can't, but yet we typically punish him for it. We either spank him, we scold him, we give him consequences, we send him to his room without teaching him any skills in return. My point is, now seeing that my kid's behavior, when it is negative, typically, I would say, I look at it from a lens of almost always, there's some sort of internal struggle. If they're whiny, if they're complaining, if they are not cooperative, there is an internal reason why they're not cooperative. And majority of the time, if I'm doing well, I can see it from that lens and I can get down on their level and say, "Hey, what's going on? Can you tell me why you're having a hard time getting dressed? Why is it hard for you to do this? I'm curious. Why is it difficult for you to put dishes away right now? Hey, I'm just wondering, how come you're not doing what I asked you to do? Is it too hard for you? Do you need me to help you with it? And most of the time, I don't punish my children for not feeling well internally. I mean, imagine yourself. If you're feeling crabby, there are days where we wake up and we're just in a bad mood, right? We're just in a bad mood. And we, even adults, struggle dealing with that, but yet we expect a 5-year-old to learn how to manage those feelings on his own without any skills and any support, and just figure out how to be in a good mood instead of getting down on his level, seeing what's going on, how you can help him and support him through that and help him through that versus just shutting it down. How many times, if our child is not behaving the way we want them to, we scold them, we send them to their room, and we say, go sit there and figure it out yourself. Until you're in a good mood, don't come down here. And I definitely used to do that with my kids. Why? Because I did not know any better. Because that's what I was taught. That's how I grew up. And even though I grew up in a really good home, my parents are loving, and my mom especially, she is just amazing. And I know that part of who I am has a lot to do with who my mom is. And if you know my mom personally, if you have ever met her, you know that she is just absolutely a gem. I definitely look up to her in so many ways. She's the type of mom I want to become when I get older. She created an environment and a home that her kids want to come back to every weekend, every week. I don't ever dread going to my mom's house. And that's the type of relationship I want with my kids, that they want to spend time with me. Why? Because I created that type of environment that's so they want to be around me, so they feel like their needs were heard, that they were understood instead of just shut down. If you're a believer, you probably heard a verse from the Bible. It says, be angry, but do not sin. So we interpret it in a way that we shouldn't be angry. That's not what the Bible says. It just says don't act on your anger and make hurtful choices, because that's what we typically want to do. When you're feeling angry as an adult, you many times want to hurt someone or something, because if you're experiencing super deep anger and rage, yet we expect a 5-year-old to handle his anger in a mature way, right? How many adults do you know that don't handle their anger well? But then we expect a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old to handle it in a mature way without giving them any skills how to do so. That's the problem. We shut down their emotion, we're not letting them feel, and we punish them for it, and then we also don't give them any skill how to handle it in the future. So I want to give you an example. Just the other day, yesterday actually, my 3-year-old, we were at grandma's house. He loves gum. I don't know what it is, but he just has a thing for gum. So he had dinner, and many times after he eats a meal at grandma's house, he gets to have a piece of gum. So he just pulled up a chair to the counter and climbed on the counter and started reaching for that gum. Since I was in the middle of talking with somebody, I didn't notice that he was doing that until my brother-in-law pointed it out. So I told my little one to put the gum back, to get off the counter, and I said, hey, what do you need to do instead? I know you really want a piece of gum, and that's okay, but what do we need to do instead? So I walked him through it. I said, you need to ask permission from grandma, and then if grandma says yes, you can have a piece of gum. So he got off the counter, he went and asked grandma, grandma said to ask mom, and then I gave him permission, and I said, okay, you can have a piece, but I will get it. And so this morning, before we were going to grandma's house for breakfast, I walked him through it again. I said, hey, Philip, when you really want a piece of candy or a piece of gum at grandma's house, what should you do? He's like, I should ask permission. And then we role play. And I say, okay, how do you ask permission? And he says, Grandma, can I please have a piece of gum? And we walked through it and we role played it. And I reminded him what he should do in the future. Another example with my older son, the other day, he was watching cartoons on the phone at grandma's house, and his younger brother came up to him, snatched the phone out of his hands, and there was a whole big fight and meltdown that came down with that. And of course, naturally, we just yell at our kids, scream at them, tell them to stop. And you should get in the middle and stop if they are fighting, for sure, if they're trying to hurt each other. And that's what I had to do. The problem is that if I'm on my phone and my kid comes up to me and he just pulls it out of my hand without saying anything, of course I'd get frustrated. Maybe even some of us would just punish him in return, or hit him, or scream, or yell. And that's us adults responding or reacting in a negative way, yet we expect a 9-year-old to respond in a positive, mature way. The situation between my kids did not go down well. There was a lot of emotion. There was a lot of anger and frustration. After I handled the situation, I had to walk away into a different room when everyone was safe, and I had to cry because I was so overwhelmed by the amount of emotions that were released and the difficult feelings that I had to handle from my kids. In the evening, when everyone was calmed down and my oldest one was already in bed, we walked through the situation and we said, okay, how do you think your day went today? Not so good. Let's talk about it. What do you think was not good? Okay, how do you think you handled the situation? Okay, did you like how you handled it? Okay, what do you think we can do better next time? When something like this happens again, which it probably will at some point, or something similar to that, how do you think you can respond differently? And I actually have him try to problem solve it. And if he doesn't have a solution, I give him a solution. And I'd say, okay, next time when your brother snatches the phone away from you and you feel like hitting your brother, you can say, hey, Mom, please help me. Matthew took my phone away when I was watching cartoons, and it was my turn to hold it. And I will step in and I will help you in the situation. I would rather step in and help my kids in their frustration and overwhelm, because I want to show them how to handle the situation in a helpful way without hurting each other. Many times, if our child is really frustrated with their sibling, they will hit them. They will react in a negative way. And that's why they need you as a mature adult who knows how to manage their own feelings to step in and help them handle the situation in a better way. After we had that talk with him, we also, which is a skill that I think many parents don't know about, and I didn't know about it either, we actually role played it. And I said, okay, pretend you're holding a phone, you're watching something. I am your brother, and I come up and I just snatch it out of your hand. What should you do? And he had a negative response, something that he would normally do. And I said, okay, try again. That's not a good response. What can we do differently? And we actually role played what we would do in this situation. What happened was the following morning, his youngest brother ended up taking his pack of gum without permission. And instead of freaking out, screaming, or hitting his little brother, which is something that is natural for my oldest, and that's typical, he came to me and he said, hey, Mom, I need your help. Philip took my gum without asking. And to me, that is huge progress. Why? Because instead of hitting his brother, instead of freaking out and reacting in a negative way, just the night before, we practiced the skill. We role played what he should do in a similar situation. And he was able to remember that, access that part of his brain, and actually apply it. And when he did that, my husband and I both affirmed him and said, great job. We saw how you responded better in this situation. That was really mature. You did a good thing. And that helps him to respond better next time, because I'm actually teaching him what to do instead of just shutting down the emotion, screaming, or even yelling at him saying, hey, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't hit your brother. You shouldn't do this. How many times am I supposed to do this? And then sometimes we even go spank our kids, right? Because that's all we know. Because we don't know how to handle it in a different way. That's all we were taught. That's all we were modeled. I'm just letting you know there is a different way. And you know what? If I do punish my kid, does that bring my kid and me closer together or not? Or if I stop the situation when they are in danger, if one of my kids is trying to hurt the other physically, I stop the situation, I separate them, I get in between of them, and then I talk to each of them separately. And majority of the time, I talk to them afterwards. You can't talk to somebody in the moment and have it be useful. You can't. Think of yourself when you're overwhelmed and frustrated or even angry at something, and somebody tries to logically reason with you, explain something to you. How much of that does go in? Probably none of it. You probably don't remember any of it. Why? Because your thinking brain is shut off and your emotional or survival brain is on, and you are not registering anything the other person is saying. Same thing for your kid. When you're trying to teach him a lesson, when he's frustrated or angry, none of it is registering. We don't try to teach a 3-year-old when they're throwing a tantrum, when they're screaming at and laying on the floor. We don't try to teach them ABCs. Yet we teach him how to manage his emotion and tell him to calm down. I can give you something that can be super, super helpful for you with your kids in the moment. For me, it was a skill that I had to teach myself, and it was transformative. What I mean by that is, instead of escalating the situation, I am able to calm down the situation. So when I see my child is being frustrated, overwhelmed, stressed, annoyed, irritated, disappointed, any difficult negative emotion, let's say, if you validate that emotion in that child, they are a lot less likely to get escalated. Yet they still might, but way, way, way less chances that they would. My kids don't throw huge tantrums and fits much anymore at all. And the reason is because when I see them being frustrated or disappointed or overwhelmed, I say, it looks like you're really disappointed that I gave you the answer no. You were really hoping for this candy right now. I know. That's really frustrating. That must be really, really hard. I'm not saying what he's feeling is the right thing. I'm just validating what his feeling is and that it's valid. And I'm not suppressing that emotion. When you do that to somebody, they're a lot less likely to get escalated. They just are. Think of yourself. I think any of this information, try to apply it to yourself first and see how you would feel if your spouse reacted the same way you react to your kids. If you're feeling frustrated and overwhelmed and your spouse comes in and they just tell you to shut down the emotion and stop being frustrated instead of helping you and supporting you in that, how do you feel? You feel even worse. You don't feel better. If you were in the kitchen cooking and you accidentally spilled something or broke a cup with milk and it all spilled over the floor and your spouse walks in and they're like, dude, what'd you do? Come on. Now I have to clean all this up for you. I'm saying this because this happened the other day with me and my youngest one. And instead of, if they came up to you and said, hey, what happened? And you're like, oh, I accidentally spilled the cup and now it broke and I have to clean up the mess. And your spouse is like, oh, it's so frustrating. Let me help you through it. Does that calm down the situation or escalate it? No, your response to your children can either escalate the situation or calm down the situation. If you validate their feeling and you empathize with it, they're a lot more likely to calm down and not get escalated with that anger and frustration. If you tell them to shut down that feeling and say, in other words, that they shouldn't be feeling that way, that just escalates the situation. And I think we've all been there. We all have. When your child is not acting the way you want them to, and then you say that they should stop, do they really stop? But do they really? And if you threaten them and they stop because you're threatening them, you never address the root issue of why they're behaving like that in the first place. All right. So with all this being said, my point is when a human, especially a child, because let's look at it from a lens of a parenting lens. When your child is misbehaving, when they're whining, when they're complaining, look at the reason why they're feeling that way. They're not being naughty just to be naughty to piss you off. They're not. I don't think any kid, if they're feeling good internally, wants to do things on purpose to get their parent angry. I don't think any of our kids like doing that. I know for sure I didn't like doing that as a kid. I wanted to please my parents. I wanted them to be happy. None of our kids like seeing us frustrated and angry and yelling at them. So if they're behaving in a negative way, let's first look at it from a lens that they are struggling. There's got to be a reason why they're whining. There's got to be a reason why they're complaining. There's got to be a reason why they're not listening. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're overwhelmed. If you're telling them to do homework and they are not doing that homework, for example, that's what happens with my oldest. Many times he's avoiding it and not starting because he's overwhelmed with it. It feels like too much and he needs me to step in and help him through it, or at least get him started in it. Or if they're frustrated, or they're disappointed. They were hoping something would happen. They had a plan that you were going to go to the park, and then you said you guys are not going, and the plans got canceled, and your child is feeling disappointed and sad. And many times we're like, oh, it's fine. It's no big deal. Calm down. Well, you know what? Maybe to him it is, because he's been thinking about going to that park the whole day, and he was planning what he was going to do there. If you had a plan to go out with your girlfriends and you planned to have a great time and at the last minute your plans got canceled, how would you feel? Probably disappointed, probably even frustrated. How would you handle your emotions and feelings? I don't know, maybe in a good way, maybe not. Yet we expect a 5-year-old to maturely manage that feeling of frustration and disappointment instead of getting down on his level and saying, hey, honey, I know you're feeling so disappointed because you wanted to go to that park. You've been thinking about it all day. That must be super rough. Let me help you. What will escalate the situation? That, or if you tell him to stop being upset and send him to his room. You didn't validate, you didn't empathize. And what happened to your relationship with him if you send him to his room? It's growing apart. You're not growing closer together because there's no empathy and validation. Empathy and validation, you don't have to change your limit. You don't have to change your ways of what you plan to do because your child is disappointed. You can still stick with your limit as well as you should as a parent, but you can empathize and validate that they're disappointed because they didn't get their way. And that's normal. That's life. We all deal with that. You shouldn't try to adjust your whole life to your kid. That's not the way life works. But if you empathize and validate them in the moment, they will not escalate to a tantrum. More than likely, they're not. And that takes lots and lots of practice. That doesn't happen overnight. I had to do that we all have many moments of practice. You will have plenty of opportunities. This will not go anywhere. But there's going to be many times you will fail. Because if you're irritated and annoyed or stressed out, to begin with, you will not be able to see this from a lens that your child is struggling and that he needs support. You will see it through the lens your child is annoying, And then you need to stop that emotion and you can't handle it because you're overwhelmed. You will not be able to handle it and you will send them away. That's what I used to do with my kids. But now, majority of the time, not always, I'm a human, I mess up. There are days I raise my voice. There are days where I feel so overwhelmed. But majority of the time, I can handle the situation from a perspective that my child is struggling and he needs my support and help. And I also need to teach him what to do instead. When he's overwhelmed, when he's frustrated, I help him understand that feeling and put myself in the situation and think, how would I feel if I was trying to build, Legos, and then my brother came and he broke all the Legos? How would I feel? I would feel very upset. I would feel sad and angry. And I would label it. I say, you're feeling really frustrated. You're feeling very angry. You were working so hard to build that Legos and your brother came and he broke them all down. I'm so sorry, honey. That must feel really, really frustrating. Let me help you. If I can, I'll help. If not, sometimes we can't fix a situation. And that's also life. And our children need to accept the fact that not everything that doesn't go their way can get fixed. What I'm trying to say is that instead of just shutting down their feelings and emotions, let's figure out why they're feeling that and let's help them through it. But first, mamas, again, you have to learn how to manage your own feelings, your own emotions, and you absolutely have to take care of yourself. Because if you don't do self-care, internal and even extra, if you don't take time for yourself, you will not be able to show up for your kid in that way. You will not have the mental energy and the emotional energy and willingness and perspective to be able to help them out. You just won't. That's just the way it works. I know if I don't take care of myself in the morning, if I don't fill my cup up, I do react negatively a lot more than I want to. Okay, here are the takeaways. 1, when your child is not behaving in a positive way, there is a reason. If they are expressing an emotion of frustration, overwhelm, irritation, annoyance, yelling, melting down, there has to be an underlying reason for it. Number 2, seeing from a perspective that your child needs your help instead of shutting down that feeling and emotion will help you stay more calm in the situation, because then you will be able to see that they're struggling instead of they're trying to frustrate and annoy me. Number 3, when we validate and empathize what they are feeling without shutting down that emotion, your child is a lot less likely to get escalated. More than likely, they're going to be able to calm down in the situation, and that's going to help you and that's going to help him or her so the situation doesn't get out of hand. You don't have to agree with them. You just need to empathize and validate that what they're feeling is valid. It makes sense in their world, from their perspective. All right, ladies, I hope some of this information was helpful for you, because for me, it completely transformed the way I parent and approach parenting. I rarely punish my kids, especially when it comes to them feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, irritated, annoyed. I try to get down on their level, figure out what's going on, and then help them through that emotion and feeling instead of shutting it down. And then teaching them how to respond better next time, actually labeling it and say, hey, Mom, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Please help me. I need your help. If any of this information was helpful, and if you can think of any other mom in your circle that would think this is really helpful and they would enjoy listening to this type of perspective, I would love if you pass on this podcast to them, because I know for me, it just changed the way I am as a mom, and it completely changed my relationship with my kids in a positive way. And I want the same thing for other moms, and show them that there's another way. You don't have to struggle and continue be constantly overwhelmed with your emotions and with your kids' emotions, there's another way to deal with it, a more helpful way. Join me on the next podcast as I will be talking about my own experience with miscarriage and how I grieved through it in a healthy way. See you next time, mamas.